Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed
when the creatively bankrupt billion-dollar company attacked. I don't think I've ever actually talked about this on my channel in a full capacity, but Avatar: The Last Airbender is actually my favorite show. Like, it's Succession and this. There's nothing else topping it for me. I think the original animated series, which first debuted in 2005, is a perfect 3-season arc of television, if not pretty close to it. And in my opinion, the things that make it so good also make it really difficult to adapt to live action. I mean, obviously the original show is animated, which gives a lot more opportunity for cool world building, character design, and action sequences. But I'm more so talking about the pacing of the show and who it's for. In terms of the pacing, it's a 3-season show with 20 episodes each, and while each season has a clear mapped out journey of character beats for our characters to hit throughout, there's also a lot of room to play, take detours, and fall in love with these charming characters. And these characters are children, presumably like the audience of children mostly watching it when it first came out. And before you yell at me, I'm not saying Avatar is for kids. Obviously, I'm still talking about it to this day. Plenty of families, adults were introduced to this show when it first got put on Netflix in 2020. It has a staying power. I'm not saying animation has to be relegated specifically to kids, but it's safe to say the original show did have children in mind when teaching a lot of these more mature concepts. Topics such as war, trauma, genocide, imperialism are all introduced in a smart way that our child characters experience, which in turn means that the kids watching it can have a better time understanding. If you're adapting this material into a live action format, whether it be a new TV show or a movie, and you're not keeping the pacing and the audience in mind when we're talking about the original show, that is automatically a bad faith adaptation to me. It's not going to work. And we already saw it fail once with M. Night Shyamalan's attempt at a live action film, which I'm not going to speak too much about here today because everything that you could possibly say about that movie has already been said. What I am going to talk about is Netflix's new live action adaptation series attempt that's coming out toward the end of this month. And from what I've seen so far, I'm very nervous. Okay, so a little bit of background. This behemoth of a bad idea has been in production since at least 2019. The series' original creators were initially announced to be executive producers and showrunners on this series, which gave Avatar fans a little bit of faith. But in June of 2020, the creators departed the series due to what was cited as creative differences, specifically referring to a negative and unsupporting environment during their time working with Netflix. And then Albert Kim, an American television writer and producer, was announced as EP and showrunner in 2021. Now, if you come around here often, you've probably heard my stance on these types of things before, but if you're new here, I am not a fan of live action adaptations when it comes to most animation. I've talked about this mostly in the context of Disney live action remakes, but I find the live action remake trend to be a tepid mix of disingenuous rehashing of old ideas that were once popular, and more recently playing into the virality of outrage bait and social media discussion, and then also the general disrespect for animation as a medium, as if a successful or iconic piece of media can only be legitimate in the modern age if it's remade in live action. So for full transparency, I'm going into this with the mindset of I don't think it should exist to begin with, but because this is barreling toward our screens on February 22nd, the showrunners and the marketers are in the pivotal we have to win the original audience over phase. And the issue is that the more they all talk about it, the less it seems that they understand the original source material, which is as baffling as it is worrying. But before we get to what they have been saying this week that has caused a lot of traction on social media, for lack of a better term, I do want to briefly address a controversy that came out before this in regards to one of the show's actors, just for the sake of keeping everything chronological here. Okay, so basically the last time they tried to remake Avatar: The Last Airbender, several of the actors were played by white kids, and the movie came out in 2010, so this was less of a conversation, I guess. But it's very clear that the original characters in Avatar: The Last Airbender are based on Asian and indigenous cultures. But this time around, the showrunner seemed to be very on board with showcasing Asian and indigenous talent when casting the show. So while people have definitely been very skeptical about this series since it was announced, it was a relief to a lot of fans that they weren't going to just be casting white kids again. However, people have been questioning the background of Ian Ousley, the actor who was cast as Sokka, who says he has Cherokee heritage. Now, this has not been confirmed, I guess, but one fan did look into Ousley's background and seemingly confirmed that he was not a member of several Cherokee tribes here in the US, and that he may actually be registered as a member of a fake tribe. Now, some people have pushed back on this, saying that Ian may be part of what's called an unregistered band. I don't know much about Native American tribes, so I can't speak to that. What I will do, though, is put the thread in the description down below so you can check it out for yourself. So, you know, because of this controversy, some fans naturally are going into this wanting to dislike the show in the event that the actor did actually lie about his ethnicity. But prior to this week, I've seen a lot of other people being hopeful just because the production design looks really solid. The characters look way better than they did in the movie, which is a start. But as I alluded to earlier, there have been several red flags with this little press tour that they got going on, and I already talked about Ian Ousley and Sokka, so let's start there.
It's alright. I mean, normally I'd hold a grudge, but seeing as you guys are a bunch of girls, I'll make an exception.
I should hope so. A big, strong man like you, we wouldn't stand a chance.
True, but don't feel bad. After all, I'm the best warrior in my village. That does it!
Anything else you want to teach us?
So it's no secret that in the original cartoon, Sokka starts out as a sexist. He is defined by his immature and ill-conceived conception of traditional masculinity. And like in that scene I just showed you, he gets continuously humbled by all of the women in his life, including Suki and the Kyoshi warriors, Toph, and his own sister Katara. And in a recent interview, Ian Ousley said that the sexism that was in the original show is not going to be as present in the new show for Sokka's character, or at the very least it would play sort of differently in live action. In the interview, this is presented in the context of like a problematic aspect of an older cartoon that needs to be updated for the modern day, but Sokka's sexism in the original series is a character choice. He starts out sexist, and as he goes on this journey and encounters numerous powerful women, he begins to break down the ideals of traditional masculinity that have been instilled in him. It's character development, this isn't hard. Now you could argue that this is maybe just a small instance of an actor misspeaking in an interview because he was nervous or misunderstanding an aspect of his character, and then it doesn't necessarily spell warning sign for the rest of the series. However, then the showrunner gave an interview where he also implied that he misunderstood the characterization of Aang in like a glaringly obtuse way, and now it just seems like nobody knows what's going on.
So, this airball game, how do you play?
Aang 7, Sokka 0.
Okay, so if you've seen the show, you know that Aang's whole thing is that he has to master all of the elements in order to defeat Fire Lord Ozai. But at the beginning of the series, he is thawed out of a block of ice and is an immature little kid. He is ignorant to the very real and adult horrors of the world. And that's what we know him as for most of Book 1, and then over time he becomes more aware of the atrocities of the Fire Nation, of the genocide of his own people, and that motivates him to, you know, fulfill what is expected of him. Now apparently Season 1 is also going to cover Book 1. I'm not sure how many episodes it's supposed to be, but from what I've read, it seems like they're looking to condense some things and speed some stuff up. And it seems like they're doing that in a way that completely undermines Aang's character development.
So we decided to make Aang's narrative drive a little clearer. In the first season of the animated series, he's kind of going from place to place looking for adventures. He even says, "First, we've got to go and ride the elephant koi." It's a little looser as befits a cartoon. We needed to make sure that he had that drive from the start. And so, that's a change that we made. We essentially give him this vision of what's going to happen and he says, "I have to get to the Northern Water Tribe to stop this from happening." That gives him much more narrative compulsion going forward, as opposed to, "Let's make a detour and go ride the elephant koi," that type of thing. So that's something, again. That's part of the process of going from a Nickelodeon cartoon to a Netflix serialized drama.
Now I understand there are narrative challenges from going to a cartoon to a serialized drama, as the showrunner said. However, in the process of your adaptation, if you're going to lose the entire main characterization and journey of the protagonist of the original series, then maybe it's just not worth making the show. Part of the reason why the pacing of Avatar is so good is because it has the perfect balance of the goofy shit with the actual plot. lot, and a lot of the goofy hijinks that do happen actually teach Aang about what it's like to exist in this modern world. I don't see in this incarnation how Aang's character development can be nearly as good if he has that sense of urgency from the beginning. Okay, in fairness, I do want to add another quote from the creator here, where it seems like he has a better grasp and understanding of the fact that Aang's goofiness is central to his character. And honestly, after reading this full interview with him, it does seem like he has a lot of reverence and respect for the material, and a lot of the stuff that's been clipped is specific discussions of the challenge of adapting something as beloved and as dense as Avatar: The Last Airbender into the typical Netflix serialized drama series format that it seems like the studio wants it to be. So I want to make it clear here that as of now, my beef is entirely with Netflix, because their entire business model and storytelling style is just so antithetical to the world that Avatar came out in like 20 years ago. Today, Netflix would never fund a 20-episode season of anything. It could be the most popular property out there. They won't do it. They make elaborate dramatic movies broken up into 8 one-hour parts. And Avatar is not that. It will never be that. And I think that's fine. In my opinion, there's nothing to gain from forcing it into a format that will not service the existing material. With that being said, there is one more quote from the showrunner that came out recently that I do want to address.
Seasons 2 and 3 are a lot more mature in theme than, say, Season 1 was. So for us, it was about striking that right balance, of making sure you were true to the DNA of the original. But at the same time, we had to make it a serialized Netflix drama, which meant it couldn't just be for kids. It had to also appeal to the people who are big fans of Game of Thrones. And so, it had to feel grounded and mature and adult in that way too.
Okay, so right off the bat, that Game of Thrones comparison made a lot of people wary because, you know, from my understanding, Game of Thrones fucking sucked by the time it wrapped up. And at the beginning of this video, I did say that something that makes Avatar really special to me is that it gives these mature concepts to the audience with kids in mind so that they can understand them. But in doing that, they don't really pander to any age group. You don't have to do anything more to get adults to like it. The original story already strikes that perfect balance. I think a lot about this quote that Mark Hamill said when he was interviewed about voicing Fire Lord Ozai and his work on Avatar: The Last Airbender in general.
I'm not taking orders from you anymore.
You will obey me, or this defiant breath will be your last.
Fire Lord Ozai. When I read it, I thought, this thing's not going to last because it's too smart. It's too intellectual. It doesn't have the flashbang wallop that seemed to be what was popular at that time. I got a lot of feedback from parents saying that I watched this with my children, and that's the best, when you can be a part of something that appeals to the entire family. Much better than any of us could have imagined, and that was largely due to the writing.
And that's the note I want to end on, I guess. I'm not necessarily rooting for this to fail. I don't even know if I'm gonna watch it, to be honest with you. Like, I personally just don't think I would get anything out of it. But I will just wrap by saying, if you have not seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, please go watch it. And when you're done watching it, if you want more of that world, go watch Legend of Korra. It's not as good, but it's still pretty good. That's all for me today, you guys. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite TV show is. Let's keep it positive. Give me some good recommendations. I'm currently watching Only Murders in the Building, but we're almost done. So after that, I think I'm gonna watch Blue Eye Samurai. I've heard really good things about that, so let me know. See you later, bye!
Forgot the next couple lines, but then it goes, secret tunnel, through the mountains, secret tunnel.